Hey y'all, this is Chrissy O here from Chrissy O's Clucky Chronicles YouTube channel and ChrissyOShow.com. And as you guessed it, we're on the podcast show today. So I'm finally getting better from whatever kind of funky illness I've had for the last month. It's been extremely aggravating and painful, and I don't know, it was horrible. Anyway, so we're better. Today, as I told you guys before on the previous podcast on our educational series here, we're going to be doing another installment of the Clucky Chronicles, diving into the fascinating world of chick hatching, otherwise known as pipping, okay? So we all get like completely marveled at our fuzzy little balls of fluff. You know, they emerge and they pop out from their cute little eggy shell. But I have a question for you today. Have you ever wondered how they do it? I mean, really. Come on, have you ever wondered? I have. So I'm going to learn you a few things today, as we say down here in the South. I want you to grab a seat on your closest hay bale, because we're going to unravel some mysteries of pipping and hatching. Now, it's not going to be a complete, total deep dive, but it's going to be enough of a dive in to where you won't be confused anymore, and you'll understand what's going on inside of them little chicken shells when them baby chicks are growing and doing their thing right before they pip and they hatch. So we're going to be talking about a couple of things today. I'm going to be talking about the art of pipping, why they pip, the unzipping act, why do they unzip, the waiting game, when it's time to hatch, and being a chicken mama and having that chicken mama mother's touch. A couple of analogies we're going to go over when we're talking about when it's time to do a helping hand. We're going to be talking about the magic of a new life, and we're going to roll on with it. How about that? All right, let's get you started today on the art of pipping. Now, if you ever wondered when you're incubating your own fertilized eggs, all right, and if this is your first time, wonderful, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining, subscribing, and all that happy stuff. I'm proud that you're a member of our flock stars. So, the art of pipping, when those babies are inside of that shell, they got a lot going on, right? So, pipping is the first stage of hatching. Now, this is the part where the chick, it creates a tiny little hole in the fat part of that eggshell, what we call the bottom of that egg, where that air sac is. And it's using a thing called an egg tooth. And what that egg tooth is, it's not like a tooth like what we have, okay? It's an egg tooth. It's just a small, sharp little protrusion on the tip of that chick's beak, all right? Now, they're going to use that to poke, get through the air sac, and poke through the egg. Now, that process of pipping, that can take anywhere from a few hours to a few days. It literally just depends on the chick's strength and the thickness of the eggshell. All right? Now, I know we all get like, oh my gosh, why is my baby not pipped yet? Why hasn't he pipped more? It all depends on the chick's strength inside that egg and the thickness of the eggshell, okay? Because those babies can't pip all the time. They're babies. They get tired. They got to rest. You know what I mean? So, now, why do they pip? Why? They don't just randomly, like, start pecking at the shell. They don't do that. They actually have a whole lot more sense than what we give them credit for, okay? Especially inside that shell, all right? Because it's a very carefully orchestrated process, and it's just triggered by a combination of different factors, the reason why they pip. First of all, that chick has got to be a fully developed and ready to emerge from that shell. It's not going to do nothing, no pipping, no nothing of any kind if it's not ready, okay? Secondly, we've talked about the air sac that's inside the egg, all right? Now, that provides the oxygen, but it's got to also be big enough to support the chick's breathing, okay? Because when they start pipping and they start moving around, they're like, hey, I'm ready to hatch, and they rupture that air sac. That's their air that they've got to take in, that oxygen. That's when they can crack through and pip through that egg, all right? So it's got to be large enough to support it. Now, finally, that chick, it's got to have enough strength just to break through after it's used up all of its oxygen. Okay? Now, you're hoping that your eggshell ain't so blasted thick that that baby can't make its way out, because it's like chipping at a rock and you're just not making any progress, you know? It's like chipping and chipping away with this little teeny tiny beak tooth protrusion, and you ain't getting nowhere. That baby's gonna get tired real quick. That's why I told y'all in the beginning, be very careful and choose your eggs wisely. Don't choose misshapen eggs with a lot of calcification on it, because you're not gonna make it easy on your chick trying to get out. Okay? Now, after they've done the pipping and they've done their stuff and they've broke through the eggshell, and you actually see that piece of that shell flake off, it's the cutest thing. You see that beak, you start hearing them chirp a little bit, and they cheeping and peeping and doing all this cute stuff. Then, as they do their other stuff inside of the egg, once they've pipped in that shell, they're going to do the next phase. And it's going to be what I like to call the unzipping act. All right? It's that next phase. That's where that chick just rotates and wallers inside of that egg. And it's using its egg tooth, all right, to chip away at the shell. But it's doing it in a circular type motion. It's kind of like this chick is a little tiny demolition crew at work on the inside of that shell, because that chick knows it's got to carefully create a large enough opening for it to pop out. It knows this. This is innate. This is inborn in this baby chick. They know that, all right? So unzipping is like a very crucial step to the hatching process. If they don't have enough strength to do it, if they've used up all their air, if they're too dry, if there's a lot of things going on inside the egg that you can't tell about, it's going to make it difficult. But if you've got a good egg, a good strong chick, then unzipping is going to allow that baby to break free from the confines of the eggshell, and it's going to emerge out into the world a ooey gooey little mess, and it's going to be precious when you see it. All right? Now, what it's also going to do is it's going to help regulate the chick's body temperature, because as the larger the opening in that egg and the more pips you see and the more cracks that you see around that unzipping part of that egg, it's just creating a larger and larger opening for its escape, but it's also allowing for better airflow. That's why we always say, when you see that chick start to pip and that unzipping start happening around that eggshell, right before that baby completely breaks free, and it'll push it open and push it open a little more and a little more, it's acclimating itself to its surroundings in your incubator. That's why we tell you to leave it alone. Leave it alone, because if you pull that thing out before that baby's ready, it can cause all kinds of temperature problems inside of that baby chick. So you really want to leave it alone. Let nature take its course. All right? So there you go. And the part that I hate the absolute most is the waiting game. Now, you know, you're going to be watching like a hawk. If you're like me, you're going to grab your chair, you're going to sit there and you're going to watch it pip and unzip and everything else. So while the chick's busy pipping and unzipping, it's going to be taking some breaks in between. It's got to rest. It's got to regain its strength. It's got to eat a little bit, you know. That's a very critical part for that baby inside that egg, because it needs to conserve its energy for that final push out, all right? Because it's got to do rest periods. There's just no doubt about it. It has to. Now, in the resting periods inside that egg, that chip's going to start absorbing the remaining parts of that yolk sac. That's its food. Okay? Now, that's going to provide it with everything it needs. Nutrients, antibodies, all kinds of good stuff. All right? So you might be sitting and waiting, but don't sit there like I do, like a big dum-dum noggin ding-dong head, and wait, and then you're like, hey, baby, you're not moving. Don't aggravate the little rascal. Let it sleep. Let it do its little thing, you know? Then, whenever it's time for it to hatch, the timing of the hatching, well, that's kind of influenced by several different factors. That's, you know, the chick's development, the incubation temperature, the humidity levels. Now, typically, them chicks start pipping around 20 to 21 days, and I've been doing this a long time. And that's after 20 to 21 days after the eggs are laid. You know what I'm saying? But however, let me just tell y'all, this can vary depending on the breed of chicken. I've had chickens to hatch at 19 days, start pipping and hatching, and I've had them as late as 24, which is a long time for a chicken egg. But I'm just letting you know that's the process, and that's how certain things, go. So we say 20 to 21 days, but depending on when you put it in the incubator, if you're like me and you lose count and lose track, that's going to be a big deal as well. So let me talk a little bit more about pipping, because some of y'all seem to want to know a little bit more. So we'll talk a little bit about it. So the term, what we call pipping, Pipping, in the context of what we're talking about, hatching chicks, as it relates to the action of breaking through the eggshell, okay? Now you got to understand why we call it that. We need to look at different words and their origins and their various meanings, so I'm going to break it down a little bit for you. Pip just means as a small point or hole. All right? It's just a small spot or a dot. Think of like pips on dice or playing cards. If you think of that, that'll kind of help you with the word, pipping. All right? So it's basically a small distinct mark. It's just where the chick is broke and poked through the eggshell. All right? There's also a sound that it's related to. Pip as a sound. It can be like a short, high-pitched sound, like a peep or a chirp. Okay, now, I don't really know what the primary reason is for pipping the egg and all of that, but I think it's worth noting that the process can be accompanied by the faint sounds that the chick's going to make. Once it breaks through that air sac in that eggshell, you can hear it. It'll peep, it'll pip, it'll chirp, it'll make its little sound. It's the cutest little thing in the world. And then pipping the egg, that's just when the chick just pips through its egg. It's just making those little breaks in the shell. All right, that's basically what it means. It's penetrating the eggshell from the inside to get to the outside. All right, and then unzipping, what I talked about before, we just use it to describe the chick's hatching process. It's just an analogy. It's rather common in our world of chicken raising. And turkeys do it too. And also pretty much any baby that's inside an egg, a duck will do it. Chicks do it, chickens do it, ducks do it, quails do it. Pretty much all little egg babies with the egg tooth, they will pip and they will unzip. Now their pip sound may sound a lot different, but they will pip and they will unzip, because it's basically the reason why we call it unzipping. It's because it resembles the way we unzip our jackets. If you've had a zip-up jacket or a zip-up hoodie or whatever, and you do that little zipper open up and up and down, that's why they do that. They unzip it, they crack that egg all the way around, if you'll notice. And when they get ready to do their final push, they're doing it with their little legs, and they pop the end of that shell off, and it makes them easier for them to roll out of that egg. Okay? That's basically all it is. So after they pip, they rotate within that egg, they unzip it, and they create small series of little cracks and fractures in that shell. And once it forms that line of cracks, and it's in a circle or somewhat of a circle part of that egg, it's literally creating its own lid so it can be pushed off. All right? So that's why we call it unzipping. It's just a helpful visual way, that I can explain it to y'all, because the chick's action is just breaking free from the shell. That's all it is. It's just a common term used by us poultry keepers just to describe the specific part of the hatching process. The egg tooth, it's temporary. It don't stay on there forever, and you'll see it once the baby's there, and then all of a sudden you won't see it, So, the egg tooth, basically it's just made of like a tough little fibrous protein. It's kind of like what forms our hair and nails and stuff, and what forms their feathers and things. It just makes it strong enough as an egg tooth and durable enough so that they're able to chip away at the eggshell. So they're all born with the egg tooth, and it's just an adaptation. It just allows them to break out of the eggshell, and they can just enter the world. It is the absolute cutest thing in the whole wide world. And I will tell you that that egg tooth really does serve a good purpose during that hatching process, because once it's successfully like hatched and popped out of the shell, it wears down, wears off, and then it just disappears. But you can actually feel it on there, you know. Now, I will say that if you're not incubating them and you have a broody hen or even a wild hen, whatever, and in the wild, I will tell you that the mama hen plays a very big role in that hatching process, okay? Because they will turn the eggs themselves, kind of like our incubators do, but the hens maintain consistent temperature and humidity levels. That's why we tell you guys to do that all the time with your incubators. Maintain consistent temperature and humidity levels, because in the wild, the mother's also going to provide the warmth, protection, and do all of these things for the chicks once they hatch. Now, somebody did send me a message and said, hey, what about when you need to help these babies out? That's going to be coming up on a future vlog, so you want to check the blog posts and the vlogs. You want to check that out. We may have one that we have to help, and we'll show you the process. But I will tell you that most, if not all, of your chicks can hatch without any kind of assistance, okay? I will tell you that. There's times when there's a little help that's needed, but if you notice them struggling to pip or unzip, you can just gently increase the humidity in your incubator, and a lot of times that'll soften that eggshell up enough and make it a little easier for them to break through, because they can dry out a little bit in there, depending on what they're doing on the inside. And you don't know that. You know, we're not x-raying them here. So it's just important to remember that interfering with the hatching process should only be done as a very last resort and with extreme caution, and you really got to know what you're doing, because you can really cause a lot of blood loss, injury, illness, and death if you don't know what you're doing. So if they're struggling and you've got a chicken farmer, a poultry keeper, person like, you know, us that understands what's going on, that can walk you through it, talk you through it, or help you out, then that's great. You got somebody to help, or a vet, you know, that can tell you what to do or how to do. I know there's a bunch of YouTube videos out there that may show you a proper process, but I can't vouch for all of them. I can only vouch for what I know and what I do. I'm for sure that you can find some out there, but I want you to be prepared and understand that just tweaking the humidity and some things a little bit in there, even spritzing the egg just a little bit, not enough to where they drown, but spritzing a little bit in case the membrane looks a little dry when you look inside of it with your light. You know, just doing a few simple things just to soften that shell and that inside just makes it easier for the babies to pop out. So be very careful with that part, okay? Because I've known people that like, hey, I tore that shell open and I used some tweezers and popped it out, and my chick was bleeding and it died. Well, no kidding. You probably poked it and didn't know you poked it. That's why we say they're very delicate. You got to be very careful with these things. But I will say, watching that magic happen, the hatching, that's the magic of new life right there happening. Babies, you know, I don't care if it's an animal baby or a human baby, it's still precious to watch. And when you're watching it hatch, it's very magical when you just sit there and watch what all that baby can do. It's just a reminder to me, you know, the circle of life and the resilience of nature. You know, nature's pretty cool. Animals are pretty cool. They do some cool stuff. You know, even we as humans, we do cool stuff. So, you know, next time you're looking at like a fluffy chick, you know, kind of pecking its way out of an egg, you know, just take some time to appreciate that incredible process of hatching that's just taking place. Understand pipping and unzipping and all of these things. Just take time to watch it and just see what all your little baby can do. So I hope that this absolutely helped you guys today. Thank you guys for subscribing to the YouTube channel. We're going to have a giveaway at the 1,000 subscriber on Chrissio's Clucky Chronicles. And we will also be doing a poll and asking you guys on all forms of our social media. We're on TikTok. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, that sort of thing. We will be asking you guys about names, because as you know, we name our babies after family and friends, and we don't want to leave any of y'all out either. So we'll start asking some of those questions coming up pretty soon. We don't name the quail anything other than Jeffrey and Brian because there's too many of those and they all look alike. But when you got yards full of chickens and ducks, it's kind of easier to, to weed those things out and make sure you got all the cool names, all the fun stuff. So if you want to be part of our friends and families list, be sure to submit it to us. You can go to the website at ChrissyOShow.com, use the contact form, or you can leave it in the comments on the YouTube channel at Chrissy Clucky Chronicles. Either way, I hope you guys have a clucky, wonderful, quacktastic day, and we'll see you on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time on the YouTube channel, and we'll see you every day on ChrissyOShow.com, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. I heart y'all great big. If you can't be good, babies, be good at it.